So I'm going to do a quick rundown because the video was flawed. It didn't look good. You could tell by looking at it. It was the shadowing is wrong. I know I'm in a little darker part of the room. This is mainly the place I can do videos, but the Sasquatch video, it just had some technical issues. That's all I can really state. So the story is 1988, 89. I was 14 years old. Took place above American Fork Canyon in northern Utah. You know, in those days there was very few people, and the mountains were pretty much empty, except for, you know, during the summer there's campers and, you know, picnickers and stuff like that, but nothing like there is today. The mountain bikers, the hikers, the joggers, the ATV riders, that didn't exist back then really. And October, you know, elk rifle, there wasn't many people. The bow hunts were just, you know, here and there. There wasn't a lot. It wasn't a very big activity. You know, things were a lot different back then. People went in the mountains and then they just left. And then it had the deer rifle, which was just the Mormon 500 in northern Utah. But we were prior to the deer hunt, you know, after the season where everybody went and had their, you know, picnic and fished American Fork Canyon, which I did a lot of fishing up there too. As a kid growing up, it was great. Gold panning, stuff like that, every once in a while. Not my dad did a little bit with me, but anyway, we did go to a place called South Fork, which was Redford Ski Resort is on one side, just down below there. You can take the road back over to Heber, and that was where this all took place. Now, I have talked to somebody since then. I told them about a story I heard about Sasquatch hair being caught in a chicken coop at one of the cabins there by Sundance Ski Resort, and he said he didn't hear anything about it. He was there during the time. Amazing thing is, he's here in southern Utah. He was there in the time I was going through what I went through that night. You know, explaining the story is in detail is probably not where I'm going to go with this, because there's you know, setting on something the rest of your life is a tough thing for a person to go through, especially PTSD. I always grip that rifle. You know, I have since that night, and they were not there to hurt us. But just the understanding that these beings exist. So they're considered beings, creatures. You know, that's a loose term. It's a very loose term. So a being it's being, it's happening, it's there, it's real. You know, that's where Sasquatch is considered a being. Howtohunt.com. He's on YouTube. Check out his videos about Sasquatch encounters all over through Canada, America, stuff like that. Great show. Watch this channel evolve. Great person. So the deal with Sasquatch and that night was, we did find the camp spot. It was being heavily used by a group of people. Little did I know until later that night that we were probably involved in an occult ceremony. That was where they were at. That's where they were doing their fest or whatever they do. You know, Jay's Journal was a popular, the occult book there in Pleasant Grove. There was a lot of activity of the occult back in the day. Devil worshiping, you know, was a big issue. A lot of people thought it was a cool thing, or a lot of people were really deadly. You know, it's like just Jay's Journal. They were very, very wicked people. And I think that's what we stumbled across that night, or that day. We actually camped in the wrong place. We should have never camped there. The signs were there. You know, the signs were there. And knowing now as an adult, you know, with a better sense of things, I would have never in a million years stayed there. You know, that was the insanity of seeing two Rottweilers gutted, which I didn't know what a Rottweiler really was. I mean, to me, it was just like the hound of hell, you know, and now they're a family pet. So that was one thing I should have left. And it did look like, if I remember right, the internal organs were taken out. They were gutted, face with their guts up, with their chest cavity up, and then I think there was hearts and different parts of their organs scattered about, and you could see that something had gone on there. So that was pretty creepy. You know, that's where you say, you know, you're in the house and you hear "get out," you get out. You know, you sell the house and you move, instead of going, "Oh, that's peculiar. Well, that was weird." You know, "Oh, let's go to bed." You know, that's you just don't do that kind of stuff. especially if you have half a brain. So anyway, I had a 44 mag lever action saddle rifle was the rifle I was going to use on the opening day. I just bought the gun. My grandpa helped me buy it, my dad and my grandpa. So I had a bullet belt, wad cutters and hollow points, all that stuff. Basically, it wasn't a very good elk rifle, but that was what I had, so that was the story with that. So we get there, we hike up over the ridge, we've seen a bunch of sign. I saw claw marks up on the tree so damn high, there's no way. They were, as I was going up the steep ridge, I'm grabbing big trees, pulling myself up in this upper basin. We were scouting across the road, and there was huge claw marks. They were big, they were clear up in the tree. I couldn't touch them, So we got the upper flat, there was 25 or 30 dead sheep, and I wasn't too knowledgeable on the subject of bears and what they do to sheep. I mean, I grew up in Alpine as a kid, and Deer Creek, and we didn't have many sheep around that time. So until I moved down here with my mom, and anyway, they were gutted, just like the Rottweilers. Internal organs were scattered. You didn't look like he was eating the groin, the private parts, and I got the creeps. I was like, I ain't staying here. My dad looked at me. I said, hey, we're not. And the other guy who was with us is like, we're staying up here. I'm like, no, we're not doing. No, there's no way we're staying here. And I was pretty aggressive as a teenager. I was a brave warrior. I had gone through a lot, and I said no to my dad, and they got in a fight. He was bound to turn to stay. And that was his main goal. We're staying up here. I'm like, no, absolutely not. I'm not 10. I'm not going to sit there and take this. I'm not going to put myself in this kind of danger, my dad, because some guy that his wife's in the occult, we found out later, that my dad actually physically threw out of her house because she was doing a seance in her basement later, after this all happened. And, he was more likely in the occult, And there was a big movement of that up there back in those days. And I was there anything but that. I was a wild, free, renegade, long hair. I prided myself on being spiritual, connected to the earth. That was my way of life back then. I dreamed of being the old ways, the old people and teepees and, singing and asking for permission to do things before you did it. Honoring the elders, honoring the, our spirit, our ancestors. So I was opposite of those people. And I always had that power to me especially when I was young and full of energy, that kind of energy. So we hiked back down. He reluctantly drug himself down the ridge. We got back down to the camp spot, still tried to go. I was like, the bad place, Dad, let's get out of here. And my dad was like, no, we're staying, blah, blah, blah. Whatever. I got a howitzer for a 44 lever action Marlin. I could just dump lead. So anyway, I needed TV poles, went across the road, had an encounter there. That was my first actually seeing that on that day before was I seen something. I ended up getting my TV poles anyways. That's another story. But I was chased by something up in there, and I made it back to camp, set up the teepee. They drank and they partied, listening to their, 60s music. My dad's a Vietnam vet, and anyway, they had a little stereo, with a little antenna, and I probably, for all I remember, he probably winded it up, and stuck it there. They're drinking some beer, having dinner, and I left my teepee, but I had a vision of the teepee that this is not supposed to be where I'm supposed to be. I need to be somewhere else. So anyway, night went on. Got back up, left my teepee, left my deer hides. I was sitting on deer hides, sitting on a fire. Go eat, and we heard some noise. My dad heard some noise. We all stopped. There was people there. The moonlight, the 4 lanterns my dad had set up, you could see there was I hate to make a guess on how many people were coming at us, but out of the blue, a bunch of people came walking at us, talking gibberish. I'll admit it, they were shaking rattles. What do you mean? I'd rather imagine a tack horn or something. They're, you know, like the U.S. cavalry, but no, they're in black, and they came at us, and yeah, I had to. My dad was yelling at the top of his lungs at them. They wasn't stopping, and they just decided to keep coming at us. I don't remember much about that, really, honestly. I don't remember the whole story. I do remember that first time I ever had to pull a gun up on somebody. You know, they it just sounds like so much bull. You know, the story would have been much better without that included, but I'm not going to lie about it. I only remember parts of it anyways. Just, well, whatever it is. Anyway, we got our backs to the fire. Dad said, don't shoot. Don't shoot. Don't shoot till you see the whites of their eyes. So I couldn't see their face. I just know I had a set of sights right in somebody's face at about 20 yards, standing by a lantern. They're coming up by a lantern. And right when that happened, we heard the roar, the first roar of the big one. He let out a roar, and he come from the north and back towards Alpine and that. Anyway, North Fork and that. And he come over the ridge, and he's knocking trees. You see him shaking the moonlight. And he roared again, and everything just took off running. These idiots all decided to run if they're, you know, I hear their robes running. And he roared again, and he knocked a tree over. You see it in the moonlight up there. I still remember the trees moving. That's what I remember. Big up on the hill. So he roared again, and just ear piercing, just damnedest roar you ever heard in your life. You couldn't copy it. So he comes down the road, and by then we're alone, and all of a sudden he had dead quiet, not a noise, not a bird, not nothing. All of a sudden he just gets the edge of the road. I look down the road in the moonlight, and there's this great big white Sasquatch looking at me, and he just turns his arm out, and he just hits this damn tree, and the tree busts and just blows up. And I see the wood chippings flying everywhere, and the damn tree hits the road, and all the branches go everywhere. And it's right there, and he goes across that road. And whatever happened after that, I'll talk about a little more in depth eventually, but it didn't end well for them. They went down, and yeah, there was some stuff down there. Just say they probably didn't have I don't know, you know, what happened to them, but I really don't care because these people are coming at us in the dark, yelling top of our voices at them, and they. So anyway, big gray one came out along the cut out of the road next to camp, and she just looked over at me, and she kind of had a bigger behind. She kind of walked across, you know, make sure everything's cool, and all of a sudden we kind of looked. We heard some noise on the other side, some movement, so we faced to the east, and here he docked that ridge. He went down that canyon, aspen trees, tall aspen trees. We're looking down like eye level at this thing, and he's just walking. So we got our guns up, and we're, you know, I'm shaking. I'm just gone. My brain was gone. He just walks along through the trees, tree to tree, just about head level. He stops right in front of me. And I got my 44 up right at him. You know, I'm right at him. Right by that tree. He reaches his hand around that tree and leans over and looks right at my face. Big black eyes, beautifulest thing you ever saw. Gorgeous parted hair all the way down. Neck was beautiful, big pecs, tough looking, lengthy, tall lats. I just looked at his body, just how tough and strong that thing was. And he's looking right in my face. And he just had this bewildered look in his face. And I had long hair, you know, I had my choker, bone choker, not the Boy Scout choker, the real choker I made. Then the bone breastplate, hair pipe, bone beads. And he's looking right in my face. You know, I got my leggings on. And he's looking at me. And he wouldn't stop looking. And I'm like this, you know, I'm right in his face. Bead right between his eyeballs. And I had the feeling to put the gun down. So something said to my head. And I don't remember this, but something said to my head, put the gun down. It was almost like he talked to me. I'm here in peace. I can't remember what was said. But I know something went into my brain as we were looking at each other. And the bewilderment in his eyes was like, you know, he's just like trying to figure me out. But he knew I was of native descent. He's like, he could see that I was his relative. Put the gun down. My dad said, Dad, put the gun down. The other whatever his name was, put the gun down. And in the scrub bushes next to my teepee, and in the pine trees next to my teepee, in the moonlight, there's these great big heads, And they come walking through the trees and the bodies. All of a sudden I see the bodies. I'm like, oh, I'm in shock. Just looking at them, you know. And there's kids that came out. And the whole time he's just staring at me. Just like, just a big hand right on the tree looking right at my face. All the little kids are in there cheeping. They're making these weird noises. So I said, we need to go. So we duck walk or straight walk to the truck, get in the truck, start at the Ford Courier, leave everything, drive around the log. Yeah, we head back down to Heber about 1 o'clock in the morning. Sat there in the parking lot till morning, had breakfast, got up, went back in the truck. Dad said, we're going back. I said, I don't want to go back. We're going back. I don't want to go back. We did go back. So we drive up there. My dad's tent was completely destroyed. Everything pulled out of it, scattered from hell to breakfast. The entire camp was destroyed. I mean, they went through the entire camp and ripped it apart. My teepee was untouched. Grass was all mowed down. Just stepped down around my teepee. Big tracks. They just walked around my teepee. Just, no. They left. That's why I have issues staying in the dark to this day. I've never seen them again. And there's people everywhere up there. I feel for what happened to them. Because they don't deserve whatever those masses of people have invaded those places. I don't know where they went. I hope they're somewhere down the Navajo reservation and they're safe. I hope they're safe. Because that big white Sasquatch that night came for me. He came to protect me. He knew who I was, but he was just, we had a connection, the two of us. He was my guardian. You know, we found out later that the other guy's wife came up with us and she was a tarot card reader and she read Guardian, blah, blah, blah. Which I don't believe in that. My dad had to throw her out of the basement of our house because she was a devil worshiper. She had a seance in our basement. And my dad caught her and he said she levitated and was chanting like those idiots were that came at us. And my dad said he picked her up, had the power of 10 men, and threw her out of the house. Physically picked her up. So the story's a lot more intense than that. There's an awful lot more that happened that night that I really just don't want to talk about. There's things in life you believe, there's things you don't. It doesn't matter if you don't believe it because you weren't there. You can try all you want. You can critique it. You can say, well, there's evidence of this. I have it. You have no idea. You have no idea. Those were the days. Those were the last days of wild and free country. A part of us died in those old ways, in the days when there wasn't people everywhere. Everybody wants to save the environment, right? Let's stop having children to save the environment. There's millions and millions of people that moved here. Just, it's happening today. Which I don't blame them, but these things, these beings used to exist here. And I hope they're safe somewhere. But in a world full of people, up every canyon and every spot everywhere, that used to be nobody except for these beings and the spirits that were still there. I don't know what the future holds or where they're at. I hope sometime in my life I get to see them again. Because that day I could have shot. I could have pulled the trigger. Where would I be now? The man that killed Sasquatch, or the boy that killed Sasquatch. You know, what would that have done for me? Made people believe. People sit back and say, oh, Sasquatch is real. Okay. Well, this 14-year-old boy killed one. Okay. Rich and famous, right? I would no more kill him than I would myself. Because a part of me exists with him. And part of him exists with me. Wherever he is. So don't tell me there's no such thing as Sasquatch. Because you have no idea. You weren't there. You can't ever be there. So keep that in mind when you judge. Somebody says, I think I saw something up there. Because no matter what you think and do, you can never make what happened not happen. Just like you can't make anybody love you. That's free will. And they had free will. And I had free will. That's the bond we carried. Is we were free from a world that existed before this one. That we got to touch. I got to touch a little bit of it over my times. And that's a part of the story I want to share with you. If you want to hear the story in its entirety, we can talk. But it gets a lot worse than that. There was a lot more that night that was there than I want to explain on camera. Unless you understand. Thanks for watching.